I'm pleased to say we can now speak to one of the lead authors of the report. He's also Professor of Climate Science at the University of Reading in the UK. He is Richard Allen. Richard, thank you for joining us on the programme. This report doesn't pull any punches at all. We're in a dire predicament, it seems. How bad is the situation in your view?
Well, that's right. So it's a comprehensive assessment of the science of climate change, and it paints a pretty bleak picture in terms of what's already happening, as you've been showing with the wildfires, but also extreme events happening across the world, heat in North America and Southern Europe and Turkey, but also extreme rainfall and associated flooding like we've seen in Iran, in North Korea recently, but also in Europe and elsewhere. And it's only going to get worse unless we commit to strong, rapid and sustained reductions in carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases.
And there's some rather alarming words in the report, not least the word irreversible. Tell us more about that, what that means, because that sounds as if things will never get better.
Yes, I mean, some aspects of the climate system are reversible. If we limit the warming, then we will be able to limit the extreme events, the reduction in Arctic sea ice and things like that. But you're right, some aspects are going to be irreversible. And these are the very slow parts of the climate system. So, for example, it takes hundreds of years to fully heat up the deep oceans, and they expand as they get warmer. It takes hundreds of years to melt the really large ice sheets that also contribute to sea level rise. So we're committed to a rise in sea level over the very long period, over hundreds of years. We're committed to this, but we can still limit the size of it by limiting the amount of warming.
So we are locked into a degree of sea level rise, even if we stopped emitting carbon right now.
Well, that's right. So we're committed to a certain amount of warming. We can, if we follow the very low emissions scenarios, limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial. And if we do that, we're still committed to maybe a metre, over the long term, even in 2 to 3 meters in the very long term. But we're talking hundreds of years. So that kind of period you can adapt to some aspects of it. But of course, for small island nations, they're not going to be able to. But in the short term, we're still committed to up to maybe a metre by the end of the end of the century. And it could be larger. Okay. That's one other aspect of the report. We're looking at these low likelihood, but still very large impact possibilities. One of these being the rapid melting of large ice sheets due to uncertain processes.
OK, Richard, I just want to jump in. Just one last question. So science have been talking about this for years now. Governments have not done enough to act. In many cases, they've done very little. How can they be persuaded now to act?
Well, the science is clear, and this physical science report gives the policymakers the tools to make decisions on climate change. And a distinct part of this report is it's involved at the last stages, the sprint finish over the last few weeks, which I was involved in. 195 countries and the government delegates have been approving line by line. So they've bought into the science, they understand what it is, and it's up to the policymakers, for example, at the COP26 in Glasgow coming up in November, to then commit country by country to strong, rapid and sustained cuts in CO2 and other greenhouse gases to limit warming to below 2 degrees C of warming or even 1.5 C of warming.
That is Richard Allen, one of the lead authors of the report and Professor of Climate Science at the University of Reading. Richard, thanks very much indeed for your time. Appreciate that.